nab you, Nakaba, in your quick and swift treatment of this dragon. I have at least the lucky situation with the fact that the dragon isn't anyone like it's not an important dragon. It's just a cool looking dragon. I was really hoping though that we would get more from it, but doesn't seem like it was that kind of character to go against. I will say though, like looking at like the results of Hauser's attacks, it doesn't look like he actually did any damage. So though I do think that he clearly has the capability of defeating the dragon, it looked more like the dragon just was aware that it can't really defeat Hauser, so it just kind of stopped because no damage is done to the dragon. Like you even see it when it gets back up, like once the baby dragon comes out, it just kind of like leans up like, oh hey, I think the dragon just kind of fine, like, but it just was fully aware of like what a losing, like trying to fight a losing battle would be, or at least maybe the dragon just didn't like regain her bearings before like the baby dragon came out. She definitely got shook up a little bit. I'll say like Hauser getting this kind of hype was really cool because one of the biggest problems I had with Seven Deadly Sins was a lot of the Holy Knights, the human characters, got screwed over. They got left so far behind with the power creep because like the odd thing was Nakaba like brought, was it Gilthunder and Hauser with everybody when they went to the druids to go train, and they got a quote unquote power up, but it didn't amount to anything. And even when it was right after they had their whole training bit, it like the power level numbers that like they were given were nothing to like the characters that the character was actually up against. I think it was like I think Guild Thunder's was like 1900 or something, but it didn't matter because like Galland, who was the weakest out of the 10 commandments, was like 27,000 in his base form, and I think his like stronger form was it critical over was like 40,000 or something like that. I'm just trying to remember vague numbers. When you look at stuff like that, it's just like it's like when you go back to Dragon Ball and you see like obviously like everybody training to fight against the Saiyans when they were first showing up, and then like when you had like everybody who wasn't like Piccolo, Gohan, or Goku kind of like in the realization that they were pretty much like a Saibabin, like they could like Vegeta and Nappa could grow characters on level with these guys. Like they were so measly in comparison to like the big characters that it didn't really matter, and everything beyond that was just those characters just kept falling further and further and further behind. And I guess for some reason in Super, like you have some of the characters being able to even keep up whatsoever to any of them. It's kind of silly. Was it like there's parts where like Krillin is like clashing Kamehamehas, but even Base Goku was ridiculous. Regardless, I mean, I guess that would be like if Guild Thunder by the end of the series was fighting Meliodas and they were on even in any way equal terms, even base Meliodas would be like, how is that even possible? But Hauser, after these 16 years, has gotten way stronger, and I like seeing this. I'm happy to see like he's actually a formidable opponent now. And while he's fighting up the ancient dragon, he uses Super Cyclone, makes a really big hurricane that just kind of sweeps him around. But the dragon looks relatively fine. Like doesn't look like any damage to the dragon. I would believe, at least based off of this, because Hauser didn't use any big attacks. Clearly, he's not strained, and I don't think he used any like super damaging attacks. For at least from what it looks like, he just kind of shook the dragon up, like just the intense gale storm, like spun it up, probably like made it dizzy and made it hard for the dragon just to kind of like maintain its balance. I would just assume, because it just what makes the most sense. Given it didn't fight back after that point, like between like it getting hit by Hauser's attack and when the baby dragon comes out. Again, I can easily see it all, besides like the idea of like it just getting kind of like extremely shaken up to like, oh well, it just was aware Hauser was stronger. But like the general idea that it also could have just got completely rattled by this intense like hurricane spin that just spun it out of control would make sense why it could be maybe like a little dizzy and not holding itself to the best. But after that point, like we had Percival hyping up Hauser. I thought that was pretty cool. Like I was very happy with the fact Percival wasn't the one to really deal with this dragon, and not only that, Percival couldn't even really do anything to the dragon. The dragon just kept noping any of his attacks because I don't want the main character to seem too powerful early on, and we've already seen him kind of run through a bunch of characters like Talisker and stuff. So like once we get to this dragon, I was a little bit worried about that, but it looks like the dragon is fine. And it was funny seeing Hauser like getting a little weirded out by Percival and all the chibi Percivals, like just in awe of him and in complete astonishment. He's just happy to see him, and he's like trying to replicate all his attacks, like just playing pretend, having fun, showing off that like innocent side to Percival. I would like to see if Percival is going to copy any of Hauser's attacks, or at least the styles, and maybe integrate it into his own. Like, could he get like some big raw magic energy vortex, like some big hurricane, maybe something like that, some big spin, and then the baby dragon ends up coming back. And looks like it's in good shape. Because like the second the mother dragon sees the baby dragon, it just gets right back up. Seems perfectly fine. There doesn't seem to be any damage to any of the dragons at this point. And things are just kind of like wrapping up for the whole like little Cant arc. And I thought this was pretty good. I want to know what's going to happen to Edlin. Like his character seemed pretty neat. One thing I was wondering about him is like when he was thinking about like his magic, and Hauser and him having a moment, and he's like, punches him after he's like saying like, oh, you're gonna just kind of like go lay low until like the heat dies down and you're not like a big problem. But I was wondering, like, with his power, like the illusions, he could actually be a really formidable fighter. He just goes into the classic, makes a bunch of fakes so you think you're attacking somebody else. He can obviously throw somebody off mentally by making versions of people on their team, or maybe like just the idea of like if you were on a battlefield and no explanation, say Edlin made a hallucination, like a whole mirage illusion of Meliodas or any other big character that like is known enough that if you saw him you'd be like, excuse me, what the hell? And then before you even kind of like regain yourself, like he's already on the attack. Like illusion powers are pretty good, especially like when you get to regular level people. You're not getting to like big crazy OP individuals. Hauser just goes and punches in. There's like a moment where they're just kind of going back and forth, and like he's like saying like, oh, just because your power wasn't like some big destructive like badass one doesn't mean you couldn't be a good holy knight. And like I said, you can be a pretty good fighter with just illusions. Like that's a pretty strong move he got just by itself. And now Hauser is like pretty much gonna kind of train him. He's gonna get him back on his feet, re-guide him. It makes sense though of why like you could go from like a criminal of like pretty fair capabilities, and obviously not like he's scum, he wasn't killing people, to like a holy knight. You're essentially going from it'd be like being put in the military. They kind of like shaping you out and then get you back to like a good path. That's how I see it with Edlin. But his whole bit, I'm hoping that his character we see again and we can see like some actual progression of this. The stuff with the dragon handle, I'm a little bit wondering at like where this is gonna go. I was talking to Quan about it. I don't really know why the cop is giving him two swords. My guess, because I did like the idea that Donnie was gonna get it. I actually really like that. Also, just because it should obviously mention this stuff about Donnie's wanting to live for his sister, live a much more fulfilling life, so he can like live out her proportion of it. I thought that was really nice. Her portion of life on top of his, so he doesn't. That's why like he doesn't want to die. That was a nice little moment for him. Gives you some understanding of why he obviously doesn't want to die, on top of generally not wanting to die. But when they're like being told, like Hauser is just like, just so you guys know, as long as you have this this piece of the coffin of eternal darkness, Arthur's guys are gonna come after you. So it's you pretty much got a beacon of villainy in your pocket. I guess not really his pocket, because Hauser ends up fixing it and puts a blade on it. Now here's my guess, because the item itself is like, was it made by the Giants? I think I'd have to go back and look at it. I think it was mentioned also earlier in Fortnite's Apocalypse, but I think it was made by the Giants. And when you look at Percival's collection, obviously the sword, the Ouroboros sword, is like the big question. Why is he getting another sword instead of just using this one? My belief, this is just a theory, is it's not like noteworthy enough to be a theory of a video on its own, but the blade that Hauser makes, Hauser obviously isn't a giant. He's not some mythical blacksmith. His dad was a regular blacksmith. So the blade that he's put on there is a regular sword. It's nothing like, it's not a sacred treasure. It's not like magical by itself. And the dragon handle, as far as I can remember, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't have any special abilities or properties of its own. And at this point, you can just kind of look at it as like it's a very durable piece of, it's pretty much a very durable puzzle piece, essentially. But the blade should be a regular sword blade. There should be nothing special about it. Obviously, you can augment it, like putting magic and stuff in it. But think about this. Say it gets blasted by some really powerful attack. The sword handle should be fine, whereas the blade should break. Now, what if after a point where Percival breaks the blade, he gets the Ouroboros sword blade put into it? So he can have it, think of it kind of like if you had, like how Meliodas had it sheathed, but it was broken. But like, think of it like if Percival had the dragon sword handle, and out of it came like what looks like a little knife. So it'd be kind of funny a little bit, especially because he's like, a kid-looking dude, even though he's like 16 and pretty powerful. If he had that, and then just for sheath and unsheath, and then he could grow the blade out of the sword handle, because that'd be perfect. It'd be easier to carry around. It would, have the properties of the magic blade, but on top of that, it would have the indestructible nature of the sword handle. Because think about it like this. If you were fighting a guy and he blasts like a big attack, and you're able to, do something about it, like block it or whatever, you could say, always keep the blade kind of good, whether it's kind of growing or shrinking, whether you want to use or not, but the sword handle should always be good. So as long as you're able to kind of grow and regrow the blade and keep an indestructible handle, the sword should be good at that point forever, I would assume. I don't really know exactly how magic growing sword is really going to apply scientifically. Like, if you chipped off part of it, would the chip grow too? Or could you essentially fix it with magic? Because you're expanding it, making it bigger with magic, creating more material. So I wonder if it can mend itself with magic. But anyway, other than that, though, solid chapter. I thought this was pretty fun. I really want to know where this is going to go. That bird, I'm guessing at the end, is a familiar of the next bad guy. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, befriend the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Run that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.